for our study session. We are convened tonight as the Provo City School District Board of Education. It's Tuesday, May 23rd, 4:04 p.m. Today we're meeting at 280 West 940 North in Provo, and we'll begin today with a roll call. I'm Rebecca Nielsen, Board President.
Jennifer Partridge, Vice President.
Melanie Hall, Board Member.
Lacey Boyce, Board Member.
Meg Van Wagenen, Board Member.
Gina Hales, Board Member.
Terry McCabe, Board Member.
Derek Anderson, Business Administrator.
Keith Rogel, Superintendent.
Okay, and welcome to everyone else who's here with us today. Thanks for being here. Is there a motion to convene our study session?
I move that we convene the study session.
Thank you. Motion made by Board Member Partridge. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Hall. We're now in our study session. We're actually going to go a little bit out of order tonight. We're going to start with item number 6, and then we'll go back to 4 and 5. We'll start with a review of Dixon plans at Derek's request. So we'll start there. So Derek will give you the time.
Perfect, thank you. And I'm going to invite Chad Jones, our construction manager, to navigate up also. Okay. Here are some paper copies if you'd like to flip through this. And there's not enough for everybody, but the PDF is also attached in Board Docs, so you can follow along. Yeah. Okay, all right. Now, I'll turn the time over to you, Chad. You just run us through your findings of this and what your conclusion.
Sure. So we took as 2012 was the last time an assessment was done. 2018 was some exercise to decide what to do with it, but the assessment of the needs and the condition of it was 2012, so we updated it from that point. In whole, the building is well maintained as far as the age goes, as well as they can maintain, but for the majority, most of the findings in 2012 have not been addressed. And in our report, probably we went through and ranked them from 1 through 5, 1 being an immediate need, 2, 1 to 2 year need, and so forth. And probably about 60% of the items were in that 1 or 2, needing to be addressed within the next year or 2. The biggest concerns with the building would be the structure, especially that original building. It was not built to today's standards. We did see some cracking, some movement from the last earthquake that we had. It could have been a lot worse. Fortunately, it was not. And life safety. There is no fire sprinkler system in there, no fire separation. Most buildings of that size should have doors that automatically close. If their fire starts in one place, it stops, the doors will stop it. Fire sprinkler system will also put it out. There's currently none of that, so there's nothing to stop the spread of a fire. So it's getting to be pretty aged and needs some serious updates.
Are there any other areas of the facility that we can move into that's still using the existing facility, move into it and use it without needing significant upgrades?
You could.
For students or staff?
Move into it now, as is?
As is, and moving once the students move out of it.
You could move into it as is. As soon as you start to do any major remodels or updates, you will have to bring it up to the fire code, up to the current codes. And so it would then become a major remodel at that point, if any work is done on it.
So what he's saying is if we do nothing with the building,
Can't use it.
You can use it, but as soon as you start to do updates, remodels, additions, or anything,
it will trigger
on
a huge
on any portion.
Timpview is an example. On Timpview,
Just like this ripple of
on Timpview,
projects.
we had to, even though in the old part, the existing part of the auditorium and such, we weren't planning to do anything with the fire system in there. But because we touched one part of the building, we have to upgrade the entire building.
Okay. So just to clarify though, so to even use the parts that we could use, let's say now or once the students are gone, those would need some updating though, to use, correct? Like fire updating, right?
I mean, if we're talking new flooring, paint,
Facelift.
a facelift, you would probably be okay. But once you have to go do significant enough work to require a building permit,
Like
then
if
they're
you
gonna
move
look
a
at the
wall.
current code.
If you move a wall or put a window in.
If you start to move
Right, 'cause
walls.
then you get a building code, and they're gonna make sure
The
everything's
boiler
code,
needs to be
and then we're not gonna
replaced,
need
the
code.
HVAC system needs to be replaced, the roof needs to be replaced. So those, kind of those big ticket items, the boiler, the HVAC, the roof, right? You start messing with the structural, you start messing with the electrical. Once you start getting into any of those things, it will trigger a system-wide, in terms of building, remodel and update, right? So you can move in as is, but it will still be the existing condition. Earthquake happens, not safe. Fire code,
So
not
should
safe.
be is the question.
What was that?
We can, but should be.
But should be.
That's the
exactly.
better question.
So Chad, could you help to clarify, are there portions of the building where we aren't concerned about the earthquake safety and the fire hazard, like some of the newer portions, are they okay?
They still don't have fire suppression.
So fire
They still don't
everywhere.
have fire sprinklers
Okay.
anywhere. Structurally, yes, the auditorium, that newer section would be okay.
And how about the 88 section?
That, I'd have to go back and look at when the current code was changed, but that would need, yeah, I think that would probably need to be addressed as well.
Okay, so basically we have an auditorium.
Yeah.
Well, and the two,
And the other
and the
areas.
2005, right, like you would have your
Right, next
2005 edition remodel part.
But the
Right.
problem with that one, when I was
Just
reading
suggest
this,
that
is
area.
that there's 0 windows, right, so it makes
The
it
classrooms
difficult.
have no windows in that
Yeah.
area. You're thinking of, yeah, the classrooms, the HVAC, the mechanical systems, the windows, the insulation on it is not great. I don't know how much you're spending on utilities, but it's probably quite a bit more than you would if you upgraded that as well.
I think we the north and bathroom. The thing under the top.
Oh, they're talking about the storm drain system.
Yes, that does go under that 2000, that newer section on the back. We talked to the Provo Water. They said, yes, we know about it, we don't like it, but it's your property. The district at the time chose to do it. It hasn't been an issue. It will not be an issue, but if some reconstruction is done, there is an easy route to go down to 200 West and across there. So it would be recommended to just get that off the property, get that from out of underneath the building and do it the right way.
So Chad, from a practical standpoint, if we're looking at any reuse of Dixon Middle School at all, it would be a temporary location for something at best.
Yes.
Is that your assessment?
Yes. Yeah.
Did I say Dixon?
I
Dixon.
think it's the Dixon.
My mistake, sorry.
It needs a lot of work. Yeah.
So did we ever answer the should question?
Yeah,
Officially?
discussion for us.
That's a whole other discussion. So then how much would all of these things cost? A lot, right now.
If we kept the building and just like, yeah, did a big massive remodel.
We did not include a cost estimate as part of this. We could do that. When we did go back, when I was involved with the 2018 study, we estimated in 2018 dollars, a complete remodel of the building would be about 40 million. So
It was 2018.
that was 2018 dollars.
That was prior
So now it's
to-
$200 million.
Yeah, it's like 4 times.
199.
Or-
I mean, remodels are, as a general rule,
Look
More
at Tempe.
expensive.
yeah,
Look at Tempe right now.
remodels are
And you had to say Tippy, right?
are a factor of probably about 0.7, 0.8 of brand new construction, because you know your shell is still there. But with this one, without knowing what the structural system is, with all the utilities, the mechanical systems of it, it would probably push to be pretty close to
One-to-one.
a new
Same.
construction. And unforeseen conditions are, as we've seen on Tip View, are a nightmare.
Would they be unforeseen conditions building on the other half of the property? Like if we decided to keep the property, build on the other half, no unforeseen conditions?
Right, because we're just building new.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that was on the table.
For the
For the,
local.
when we were, the debate between where to do it,
Yeah.
so that could be the direction we choose if we're gonna, and then decide what we would like to do at this site.
Okay.
That's the update for the condition of the facility, okay? In terms of what to do with the facility, I think that's gonna be a multifaceted approach. I think you could have one, the facilities committee consider it, like we've been talking about, right? You could have an outside committee that includes the public's input, have some board input, have some district input, right? There's numerous ways that we can approach this going forward, but from a facility standpoint of what this facility is, it's going to be very expensive to try to bring this up to code, the current building standards, right? And so it's essentially a one-to-one on a try to renovate this with all the headaches, or if we want to use that site, just rebuild, and you're dealing with essentially now no unforeseen conditions, and the cost is not the same. And we could design the building too, the design, to have the exterior look similar to whatever design we want. It could be similar to the
Kinda like
existing.
Provo Peaks, right.
Bingo, right?
So I'm kind of new to, I know there's so much history with Dixon, and I don't know all of that, but two questions that I have. One, are there historical covenants that protect the old original part of Dixon with the city of Provo? And
It's not a
okay.
historical building?
It's not, okay, that's what I
It's not
wondered.
registered.
It's not registered, okay. And then, I guess the second one is, what, are there promises though that have been made to the public?
Depends on how you define promises.
Okay, okay, what is the understanding, like, give me at least a couple, maybe even perspectives or understandings of where that is though? And in terms of maybe board members, what you feel like your neighborhood understands, just so I have a little more history.
When the talks were in place, one of the things that was talked about was that if they conceded to not redo, like to have it, we're talking about the members of my community that want, not just my community, like all over the city and all over the state, to be honest, to keep the building on, to keep the school on site, was would they back off of having the building be restored, or that's not the correct term, it's not restored, I can't remember what, is that right? Restored.
Yeah.
Would they back off of their objections if instead of having the building restored, we built a new one here and then demolished it, but then we voted to move it? And so my guess is they're going to want to restore it because that part of the, it wasn't a promise, but that part of the discussion.
That was a concession.
Yes, that was a concession. I was sent to talk to them. That was the concession that we talked about, and then the vote went the other way. So.
Okay. But that's just information that helps me understand where people might be thinking about. Okay.
I definitely think we want to include the community in, it's gonna be a long decision process, and I think it's important to, but to have all the information as well, like knowing the cost, knowing the options. I mean, like, can we just somehow save the front wall and use it in a new build? How expensive is that compared to?
Or design it, have it be almost exactly brick for brick the same
Yeah.
layout.
Yeah,
Right, right.
I've worked on projects where we had to tear down historical buildings, and we actually used the exact same bricks for the new one, and we made it look identical with modern amenities, modern technology. It is possible.
Also expensive.
Not as expensive as restoring, I would guess.
It would be, I mean, yeah, about the same. I mean, to mimic it, to create the same aesthetics and the same look is going to be the same cost, regardless of how it looks.
Well, and we have to determine also what the building will be used for, and I'm guessing we're not gonna want the inside to look exactly the same anyway, so if we can find a way to make outside part that we love looks similar and then meet the needs for whatever the purpose of the building is.
Yeah.
With a new type of build, that might be a good way to go, but again, we need to have that conversation with everybody.
And I'm uncomfortable using the building past, there's no fire system.
That's, yeah, I don't.
Like,
It seems that our next step is actually then deciding what we want to do at this location, and then look into how we're gonna rebuild, or what direction that way. Because it seems.
Chad, can you just clarify for me one more time? It's gonna be the same price whether we restore or whether we build new? Did I misunderstand that?
Typically, you save about 20% to restore, but in this one, without doing a full detailed cost estimate, just what we've seen, I'd say you're closer only about a 10% savings.
That's also a 100% condition, so you can easily
And
do
unforeseen.
something and have it.
So Chad, you mentioned the roof earlier.
Mhm.
Is it possible to do the roof without it having an impact on the structural walls?
Replace the roof?
Mhm.
Yes. On the additions of it, on the original 1931.
I'm just talking generally for the entire facility.
Oh yeah, generally, yes, you could replace the whole roof without
Even with the
changing the
unreinforced
structure.
masonry walls in some of the areas and stuff.
It doesn't trigger a permit that requires you to bring everything up to code, 'cause that would be.
So we still
Well, why would we do that?
unsafe
I see that's the
seismically
thing,
and fire.
Why would we do that?
Just because of cost, that's all.
Oh, I'm just really uncomfortable putting people in there. I'm uncomfortable with our kids in there now, but I'm really uncomfortable putting people in there when there's seismic issues and there's fire issues.
I agree.
For a 10% savings and the potential to have escalations that happen really quick due to a renovation, the risks, in my opinion, far outweigh essentially the option of just rebuilding on
Well,
site.
seeing as you mentioned the word risk, I mean, we would have to get risk management down here to give us an assessment as well about how wise this approach would be.
When you say restore, do you mean just putting Band-Aids on it, or do you mean gutting it?
Well, I guess restoration, if you look at the true definition of restoration, it is bringing it back to its original state.
Kind of like with the
Oh,
Pearl
I
State
agree.
Temple, right?
Right.
They
With the library.
restored it, right?
So it's.
But that was a higher cost to do that, right?
And that is going to be your highest cost to restore it, because that would be bringing in the exact window, type of
Yes,
windows,
you're like making it
which
true
may
that
not
time.
be
Which
being
which I
made
don't even
today.
think, so, and I remember when I talked to the architects, when the discussion was happening, they used restore, but they used a different one, refurbish, there was another word that they used.
Revitalize, restore, renovate.
But it was basically that they gut it, keep the outside, then the inside changes.
Yes.
And that's a whole different,
That
and
could
that,
be
is that what we're talking about when you talk about it's gonna be
That would
about the
be,
same?
I'd call that a renovation, so that one would be about the 10.
Would the renovation include like all the new structural that would need to go into that building though?
It
as
would
well?
include, yeah, structural bracing is needed, yeah.
So renovation equals bringing everything to code.
Correct. Restoration brings it all to code and also keeps the exact same appearance, historical appearance.
But that doesn't add to the building though, correct?
No.
It's just what's actually there. So if we wanted to expand the building and have it be a bigger place, then it would cost more money to do that than it would be to rebuild on the other side.
Yes.
And it feels like until you know what you're using that building for, this decision isn't really one we're
Right.
making,
Yeah.
just another agenda item.
But it's good information
Yeah,
for us
for
to
sure.
have
Right.
as we go
To
into this
define terms.
decision-making
Yeah, I
process.
agree.
And for me to be able to go back to my community and say, is this public, Derek,
This is not public
Okay.
yet.
It's on board doc.
Well, actually, yeah, so yeah, it is public.
It is
now.
public, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Under
so-
public
Yeah, I put it on,
content.
I put it on board
Go ahead,
docs
Gina, do you have a question?
yesterday.
I think I know, and maybe you've already said, but can you state clearly what your recommendation would be if we were to use this site?
Put you on the spot.
That's what I was asking.
How did you
we get
enjoy
the
working
should?
for us?
You can word it however you'd like.
You know, like I said, I did another one where we had to tear down a historical building. I do make enemies by that. I made my mom an enemy because there's actually a quilt store that she used to shop in that we tore down in Lehigh. But given the unknowns of it, given that you're not gonna be saving money, given how much needs to be done on it, I would recommend building new and making it appear like the old.
Going new also has a quicker timeline.
Much quicker.
Shoreline is cranky right now.
And if there's no one on the property, it would go even quicker because we're not having to work around
Correct.
different people, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody have any further questions for Chad?
I cut you off, Meg. Did you have a question?
No, well, I was just kind of thinking back to 2018, because there were different bids based on restoring, renovating, or building new, correct? And so, I mean, obviously the prices are going to be different, but those will still give us an idea of the differences between the approach.
Correct.
Right.
And there were some.
So I don't know if anyone remembered those, I can look those up one
Why,
more time.
now you said 40 from 2018, right? Isn't that what you just said earlier in the
Yes.
meeting?
Yeah.
Why do I remember 55?
Because we added to the building, I believe.
Because we were
Okay,
adding
well,
to
there
it?
was, if I remember, we did a few options. We did one option to renovate the entire building, one option to tear down everything bought in 1930 and build new.
Okay.
And then one to build all new. And so from those, when I was looking back, the one that was just to renovate the entire building, 150,000 feet, was about 40, between 35 and 45.
So that was less than the other options, but the other options, you were getting more, basically, because we were either
Correct.
adding or something.
Yes.
Thanks, that was
Okay.
all.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Chad.
So let's go back to item number, well, do we want to do item 5 next since it's related, district space needs? And then we can go to item 4, is everyone okay with that?
Yeah, I think we should.
Okay, let's move to item number 5, district space needs. Keith, that is for you.
Okay, so Bonnie, if you can pull that document up. Did the board get the revised version of this yesterday?
Yes.
Okay. So we did spend some time yesterday in council meeting trying to put them into some type of organized order about unmet space needs. So you see the top category are the issues that are urgent that we need to find a home for, and I can explain any of those if you want to discuss them. The middle category is less urgent, but coming down the road. And then the final category is, what did I call it?
Contingent on other action.
Right. So let's say, for example, that the board decides to sell a piece of property that maybe the sale of that has a ripple effect for a need that is, for a new need that is created elsewhere. So, that's what it is. Bonnie, you're still working on it?
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
Keith, I don't see on here, sorry, did you have more to say?
No, go
Okay,
ahead.
I don't see on here, I see the ESL adult classes.
Yeah.
Does that include all of the adult ed stuff that's happening in the portables over at Independence? Or is that another?
It does, well, we debated whether or not to put it on here because currently they're housed.
Right.
So these are, what we tried to address here was unhoused or some type of imminent changes.
Can you describe the remaining needs at Westridge?
It's simply that we have portables up there, so which are varying age, and when we talk about security issues, they have to leave the building, the portable to go outside, and a door has to remain unlocked for students to be able to get into the restroom, go into lunch, and go into the office. So it's simply from a security standpoint. At one point with the previous bond, the proposal was to potentially add a wing to Westridge and bring them in under a common roof line, so everybody was in the same building.
And we haven't had any like big fluctuations of attendance at Westridge. Like, are the numbers and the attendance there still pretty
Fairly
similar
stable.
that we can still justify needing that?
Yeah, fairly stable, yeah. Yeah.
So with talking about Westridge, where does this new Westside Elementary School?
So that is directly north of the current Provo High School. We bought 11 acres there probably about, I'm guessing, maybe 7 years ago.
Okay.
We kind of undercut the developer out there by acquiring those 11 acres directly from the owners at the time, simply because we felt that there was going to potentially be a need to manage the growth on the west side.
But we have a school on the west side right now that is under
Yeah, that's what
filled,
I'm trying to.
correct?
Right,
Like,
and
I don't know why we.
it's not an imminent or
Which one are
urgent
you
one.
referring to?
Amelia.
I mean.
That's the one that's always in the conversations.
Yeah.
I think there is I think the new
Franklin's numbers
elementary
have come
site
up.
would be something similar to like what Terry has brought up before, the boundary changes could possibly, before we actually had to build a new elementary school, boundary changes and making sure that we fill things properly.
It was simply a land bank issue, something that we could have to have a chip in the game down the road. It's probably only about 4 blocks away from Lakeview Elementary School. And Lakeview Elementary School is large.
Yeah.
They're oversized for their size of building. So obviously very, very close by could potentially be some type of school there, but then you get into all kinds of disputes about who goes to which school and those kinds of things. One thing that you could look at down the road is maybe splitting it to be, one would be a primary grade school and one would be an intermediate grade school.
But then that's only going to be for one set of kids in the district?
That is correct.
As we have this long-term discussion, I think it would be great if we could soon get some ideas of how much space does adult ed need, how much space does East Bay Post High need?
Square footage.
Yeah, square footage.
How many
wise, right?
students actually are mentally fragile?
Fragile, yeah, so that we can have
And
an
how much
idea.
space do they need? Yeah.
That's why I think
Where
this-
would it work best? How could we best support those needs, right?
That's why I think this discussion that Derek brought up, that we did on the facilities committee or the FAC or whatever we decide to do, I think that's where we can start to ask those questions directly to those programs. They can give it to us, and then we can. I liked the process that we did recently. I think maybe.
Could we add to like contingent on other actions too? Like our other sites, like Grandview, the little site that's next to Centennial, I forget what that. Hillside. Like there's, if we're gonna make it, like if something we were gonna make it bigger space on Dixon, that those sites all became into one plot, or, I mean, just an option.
Sure, sure.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Like taking what we have up at Grandview and it would become part of the Dixon site. With the Hillside and become part of the Grandview site, or part of the Dixon site too.
What's that Hillside? Sorry, what is
Right by Centennial, just when you take your
Southwest,
left.
just barely
it's
southwest.
There's a little tiny building that's right there that's called Hillside, and they have, who's housed in there right now?
It's offices.
Just offices.
District offices?
Yep.
I have no idea.
For
Oh, I know what
social
you're talking
workers
about.
and-
Yeah.
And Doug, who's in there?
Special education, the school psychologist, and then the after-school program is currently in there as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd love to, in our next iteration of this, I'd love to see those programs on here, what their, what their needs would be. Like I envision maybe Dixon being, and I think my community would like this, being a spot for secondary kids to be able, so just meeting different needs of secondary kids. And I think that would be a great way, you know what I mean, bring our secondary kids all together in the same spot-ish. What are we talking about? No?
Well, there are no kids in these buildings.
Yeah.
Like if you talk
Oh,
about
that's true.
Grandview.
That's true.
Like,
But I think knowing what all of our needs are and then letting the community help us.
Figure it out.
How do we meet these needs? Is Dixon the right site for this? If not, what are some other options? But what would meet our needs and be a good fit in the Dixon area?
I'd like to see adult ed on here as well. Eventually.
I think it was originally.
I think it was
Yeah.
originally. They are housed. I agree. It's kind
But
of
it's
a
affordable.
crummy
But
house.
so the district office is housed, right?
Right.
CAPS is housed.
Right.
And aren't ESL adult classes already at Dixon?
At Dixon.
At nighttime.
So the point is they could stay there after
Got it.
Dixon moves out.
Okay.
But-
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, that was, wanted to put it that way.
Todd, with CAP, do we have a actual agreement with New Skin?
Not a long term,
So they
it's a
could,
year to year.
it's a year to year.
And that could be a problem anytime.
They can actually kick us out at any time in that agreement. That was part of their agreement that I raised as a concern, is that this says that they could kick us out at any point in time. Are we really ready to move into a program that if they said tomorrow you're done, and we're working on the semester.
We've gotta figure out
what to do. And they said they were willing to figure it out, so.
Do we have any
that's-
kind of like idea of what we would do in that instance?
I left that to that department, so.
But they've been a good partner so far.
They have.
So I
There's
would
no
assume
issue.
they'd
There's
at
no
least-
issue.
Yeah, they would at least
I-
give us some
no
notice, I
reason
would
to-
think, yeah.
And all I'm saying is in terms of that concern of having to find a place,
Right.
we're there.
Can you really quickly just tell me about the new Provo High wing? I know we talked about it.
So the design of the current, the new building, it was built with 3 wings that protrude eastward from the main building.
Okay.
And the design was left open to be able to add a 4th wing on the north side of that.
Okay.
To basically replicate exactly the same thing with the 4th wing. And that is just to accommodate growth over time.
So what is their, are they at capacity? Like what is the capacity of the building and what is the enrollment?
It depends on what you call capacity. We can probably slice and dice this any way. One person's capacity is every classroom used every period. That suggests that's a very efficient way of doing it, but it suggests that teachers do not have home classrooms that they go to and that they can therefore set up and prepare for to house different classes that come in. Others are, it's a matter of one class per, or one classroom per teacher on their assignment throughout the day. So we could probably answer that question from a couple of perspectives, and it gets down to what's both efficient and also what's fair to the teachers. Teachers don't like sharing classrooms, but it's a cold hard reality that we have to deal with, especially when the school is growing. Right now, we have room for everything that's required at Provo High School. That's not a problem.
Are teachers
But-
sharing classrooms?
Yes,
though?
I know
There
that
is
for
some
a fact.
sharing going on, and there continues to be more and more houses built on the west side.
How
So
many-
I know the students have complained to me the cafeteria is too small.
And the cafeteria was built
It was
for,
built too small.
it was built at about 80% of what it should have been built at.
Why? How many classrooms are in each wing?
I don't have that number
3
offhand.
floors?
3 floors, there's probably about 10 to 12 per wing.
Okay.
Per
So
floor.
if we're committing to a new wing, whenever we do, it's a lot of
It'll
classrooms.
be a sizable add.
So we have to
And the
make sure we
students
balance
have
that.
told me that the only wing that's the hallway that's really crowded is where the English language teachers are. That's always crowded.
Can you help me understand, like, we're expecting more growth, but I also have heard that we aren't a growing district, right? And so even this idea of we only need 2 middle schools, but then, because we're not growing, but now we're growing more, we need more space at Provo High. I'm trying to
Conflicting.
understand that a little bit.
Yeah,
Does that
because when
make
we
sense?
looked at, like, at our last board meeting, they showed us enrollment and we were up because of East School, but then we came down and we've been flat basically for.
Sure, so are we sure that
See, we're sending mixed messages. I'm getting them too, but the public is also getting mixed messages, like.
But I think you need to, I mean, I've been through the battles on this one, so
Sure, I
let me
just wanna
tell you
understand so I can.
what I've seen. What I've seen is that if a district tries to overbuild a school, they'll be ridiculed for that. If they build a school to current numbers, plus maybe about 10%, they can argue that, but there's the field of dreams syndrome when you ever get a brand new building. You can build it, they will come, and all of a sudden, now you have a new building that you're having to add portables to. So you're trying to thread the needle on this one by doing appropriate projections. We do reach out to demographers to make sure that we have the right amount of projections based on both current numbers and projected growth, but it is not an exact science.
Like our population is growing, like that's what the last census report showed, like our population is growing, but the coupling of, we have an aging population in Provo, right, that's turning over, and people are having fewer kids, right?
Well, and add to that, we've got more charter schools that are being approved.
More charters are being
So-
approved.
So they're siphoning off some of the students that would normally stay in the public ed system.
So
Which makes sense,
maybe-
but then why do we need more space?
So I think what I'm understanding on this, it's on the list because
It's
it's an
potential.
option, it's
Sure,
a
okay.
possibility.
It might happen.
Yes.
Are we there yet? No.
No.
Okay.
But know that it could happen.
If
It-
the enrollment
there's- yeah.
necessitates
Okay.
And I wouldn't necessarily say that a new PHS wing is imminent. It certainly is not urgent at the moment. It could become that way in the future. It's just something to keep an eye on.
Sure, thank you, yeah, I just trying to.
Those are good questions.
Yeah. Any other questions on this or comments?
So next steps would be that would be my question. I would like to see this move forward. One of the biggest concerns in my neighborhood is, are we gonna have an abandoned building?
We don't want what happened to Mazer happen again.
And
I don't
so-
want it to be abandoned either, I think we need to.
So I think we need to, what are our next steps, and then how do we implement those next steps?
Which probably needs to include what phase then do we bring in the community, right? Because we've all prioritized that that's important.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we do that, right? And so it's meaningful and
Are we
informative.
interested in reconvening the Facilities Advisory Committee?
I think we get an advisory committee together, present our needs, get the more details we need, and start having a group conversation.
No,
So
that's
we'll
good.
work on getting some square footage estimates for everything up on here. For you to know, I've recommended to Derek and Rebecca and Jennifer that you folks schedule sometime in the not too distant future a day-long executive session to go through all of our current inventory of properties and their use. And the reason it has to be an executive session is because you're likely going to be looking at property values in that. And that's not necessarily something that you want to put out in the public while we're just trying to figure things out. If you do decide at some point to sell something or to acquire something, again, you know that those are the things that we keep in executive session. So.
So you think that's the next step, or do you think gathering?
I actually think I think you need to come together and say, and start to at least, if not identify, then prioritize from a board's perspective what your needs are, what you want to see happen. And then I would say present that information to the Facility Advisory Committee and help them sift it through. That would be my recommendation, because bluntly, I'm probably the only person in the room, not even Derek, who knows the history on the value of each of these properties, where they're located, how big they are, and what they've been used for. Jennifer probably has the next in line because she was on both facility advisory committees. But I'm going to be out of the picture soon, so you folks need to all have a really clear idea of what our inventory is and where things could happen.
So
Okay.
go ahead. I was just gonna say, I think it's important to get a facility advisory committee started soon, but with summer coming, that's gonna be hard. So maybe if we aim to have that ready to go by August, and in the meantime, we can find the time to have this more information for us as well.
And I was gonna say, I think we have to, as we look at what are the square footage, space needs of all the current things, we have to also look at enrollment in schools. So that we have that information, that as we're thinking about
You
this,
can do that on
right?
Elmo right now, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
when we're looking at that, I just want that to be a piece of that whole picture that we look at. Factors in
I
all.
would like to also, this is gonna cost a lot of money to do, which I understand. We need to understand the financial burden it would put on, and like, where does that put us? Does it drop us down to a single A bond rating? Does it, like, those types of things are.
How are we gonna pay for it?
How are we gonna pay for it?
Options.
So.
And that's what we're gonna have to essentially get to the point where we've kind of formulated an idea of what we want. So that way, when we go out to say, this is kind of what we're thinking is we need for this property, to then go out and get estimates to then say, okay, well, an estimate of something like that is, let's say, $60 million, right? Then I can take that, build it into our financial models to say, well, we can cover this much with cash, we're gonna have to bond this much, or, and play with those levers.
So when we meet, if we look at every facility we own, right, and its value, also its use, right, and then we can go from there.
So what I think I'll do is put out like a calendar survey and see when everyone happens to be available for an entire day. Because I do think we need several hours on this, for sure. And then we're gonna try and see if we can't put something together before Keith leaves. And maybe we include Wendy in that too, so she can become,
Definitely.
so she can
Absolutely.
become,
Yeah.
like, kind of get up to speed on this. 'Cause
Yeah.
she'll be in the middle
She'll
of
be
this
jumping
same
in.
conversation. But in the meantime too, we can start working on reconvening a facilities advisory committee.
And I'd like to be involved in, or at least part of the discussions about who gets on that committee.
So the way it worked when I was a community member on it is that they invited one person from each elementary boundary, and it was the school board members who approached and found people to be on.
And on this 2018 bond though, we did 2 from every elementary
Oh,
boundary.
we did, yeah.
So
So I think we can all be a part of that.
So that's how it's historically been.
Yeah, and we could still, we don't have to follow that model, but I think.
I'd like to see what other people have done, and I've heard some interesting comments about the Facility Advisory Committee, so I would like to take a look at that. Thank you.
Are you volunteering to do some research?
Nope. And I'm also not willing to call that all-day thing a retreat unless there's massages and.
No, it's not a retreat. I will come up with a different name. I'm fine with an 8 a.m. an all-day meeting. That's
There we
totally
go.
fine with me. Okay, so then how do we want to go about figuring out how we're going to do our facilities advisory committee?
Okay, I'll do some research.
I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying.
Gina, when you say like researching other
How do,
districts,
yeah,
other boards,
how do other
they've
people
gone
do
about
it, what
the
has
process
worked,
like
what
this.
hasn't worked?
Do you want help her on that
I
assignment,
can help
Gina?
you. I'll help you.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so Gina and Meg. Okay, and if you'll let us know, like as soon as you can, like what you found out, or maybe even a recommendation or something, then, or all the different options you've seen, then I think that can be helpful.
Okay.
What's our next meeting is June 13th, so possibly put this on the June meeting if we wanna.
Everything's on the.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on that meeting, but.
I can't be there, so I
Oh,
know, because
shoot.
I like,
Well,
every.
that one might also be an 8 a.m.
That's true.
Just based on how much stuff is on that one, so, all right. Okay, any further comments, questions, or anything else?
So council will work on getting you approximate square footages for each of these. And then probably, well, I'll talk to board leadership about this, but I'll work on updating that facility inventory so that you at least have a document that you can go back to. Okay.
Is council talking to the, like, how is council getting the information? Are they talking directly to the programs, or are they just guessing?
That's how we'll do that.
Okay.
Yeah. So Siraj will have input on a number of these, and then others.
Okay, great, thank you for that. We'll move backward, we're still going backwards, to item number 4 here for our attendance policy discussion.
Yeah, thank you. I want to just be aware of the time you've got. I appreciate that we had an opportunity in our policy review committee that a number of you are on to have a good discussion, a couple of good discussions. So I think the point of today is to make sure that we clearly get for the public the opportunity to have that read. I know that there's been some since the last board meeting who've already given us some input, and we really welcome that. I appreciate the 3 or 4 comments that have been forwarded to me about some of the content, some of the tone, some of the making sure that we get this right for our patrons. This is something that's very functional for the school district, but we say right up front we want this to be a partnership because engagement with kids at school and their success has to require that we work together. So we really, again, continue to invite the public's participation in that discussion. Yesterday in the policy review committee we talked mainly about the policy part of it. And we got, and I don't know if that's able to be displayed, or you can find that in your board docs. I give it to Bonnie earlier today to get in there, and you'll see a revision based on yesterday's conversation. So it's as live as yesterday's conversation, where we tried to add, and you'll notice that the additions from what you saw in the last documents, for lack of a better way to know how to do it, I put it in blue. So you'll see blue text that marks additions to the red text, and then strikeouts, of course. This is all based on what is currently on our books as a school district for attendance policy. So I think that's probably where the lion's share of the work with your role as a board is to make sure you set a policy that also gives direction to the superintendent, his team, to execute a procedure, which I know some of you looked at as well and given me great feedback. And we're continuing to work on and will update for the public the revisions we make as we go. But that's still very much a live thing. So I'll pause there, just see if there's questions you have, guidance you have related to the next steps you'd like to take, knowing that our target is in June to hopefully come around to that second read to where we feel like we've got something that we can execute as a policy and a procedure that's in the best interest of our schools and our public moving forward.
And if I understand you correctly, Doug, sorry, I just
Go ahead, Gina.
From our discussion on the policy committee, the reason that there's such a time crunch is because we don't meet in July, and they need this policy to do training and to be able to get this, so the schools can put their ducks in a row prior to school being in session. So that's why we feel a crunch with the time.
Thank you, Gina.
Is that correct?
You represented that really well. Thank you. Melanie.
So my question is, and I don't know if this goes under policy or procedure, but is there something in here that we can talk about what teachers' expectations are with what, like, coming from when I was teaching, when I had students on a lot, it was a lot of extra work on my part. So what the expectations are for what, if a parent pulls out,
It's in the procedures.
is it in there saying like what a teacher is expected to do if a student is missing, or?
Yeah, I think that we could get more explicit about that. I think the way that that's probably written at this point, just judging from my memory on that, to be a fair question, is that it puts the responsibility squarely on the student and the parents to seek out the work that they've missed for any sort of an absence. Now, to say to a teacher, be cooperative or be reasonably accommodating, which is the term we keep using throughout there, and we even provide a definition because it's something from state code, that reasonably accommodating term. It is on the teachers to again, in good faith, try and meet the student and the family where they are to recover learning. I think that's what I think people will hopefully see amidst the language that feels a little abrupt and brisk at times. Our intent with this is to help kids learn and succeed academically, and our belief is that they need to be there first. So the teacher, again, does bear a lot of burden. It talks a lot about the responsibilities to mark attendance, to reach out when someone's looking like they're not meeting the grade level standards or failing. But I think it's kind of inherent in there, and maybe if you're advising me, Melanie, I can try and find some language to say the teacher has a responsibility to, in a meaningful and reasonable way, accommodate a student's request to access makeup work so they can recover the learning. Is that what you're getting at?
I'm also getting at the point, I'm trying to, as a teacher, I don't want them to feel like they're being overburdened either when you have a parent taking their kid out for a week or so. And then the parent might come back and say, well, we've been gone, so here, make up my kid. Or I just don't see that that's fair to the teacher when the parent made the decision to pull their children out.
Yeah, do you have any, well, yeah,
sure.
sure. Do you have any advisement or direction for me on that?
I think the wording that you use, though, in the procedure says clearly that it's the parent's responsibility to do that work. It's on like page 5, did you say, of the procedure?
The teacher responsibilities are just record the attendance, create a really great classroom environment, and then notify the parent if they're failing. Like, that's the 3 responsibilities, right? So that doesn't put as much of a burden on the teachers. It does put more responsibility on the parents when they decide they want to take their kids out for 5 days for vacation or whatever. It does ask them to have it pre-approved, right? And so that is where I think that helps lessen the burden on teachers, is if they're taking their kids out for however long, and the teachers, right, then an administrator can say this is going to put too much burden on a teacher.
One of the
to have to
distinctions
make that
you might
this much time.
think about, Doug, is making a statement along the lines that teachers can share missed assignments, but missed classroom experiences cannot necessarily be made up, because they can't. You can't replicate a discussion that is teacher-led and involves an entire class. Those are hard to replicate. But if there's an assignment given, you can replicate that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Just one comment on the policy. I really like that you added, after Rebecca's or Jennifer's comments, the blue sections here. I think that's helpful to just put a little more in the actual policy around what
Our
the
statement.
collaborative responsibilities are for students and
appreciate
parents.
that.
I really love that. One thing I noticed under teachers there,
I don't know if it's important to clarify, but again, it's that language where it says teachers shall create a safe and engaging classroom that will encourage students to come to school and reach out to absent students to find out in a supportive way why they are missing school and what would help them attend more regularly. Again, because that follows that word shall, would it help to clarify chronically absent students or some
It
word
says
that marks
frequently.
like more than frequently absent students?
It says that.
In the policy,
Not the
not
policy, it does
policy.
not.
Oh, in the policy.
So
Yeah.
that's
Okay,
like
I'm a
maybe just
procedure.
adding that word frequently, just so that a teacher, a parent's like, well, you didn't reach out to me when my
Thank
student
you.
was absent one time, and I just think that language shall could end up feeling like an extra burden for teachers.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I know that principals who've seen this policy say, well, this sounds like there's a need for us as administrators to make sure that there's an assurance that this work happens when we use the word shall. So to make sure that everything that you ask them to do and follow up on then is reasonable. And I think that that would add to that, whether we use the word frequent or use the word chronic to the term absent, I think that will make it a little easier for them to exercise good, administrative decision making in how they follow up with
Yeah.
teachers.
And chronically
I
absent
think
is
that-
defined in your definition,
Right,
so maybe
exactly.
using a term that's defined would help teachers
Right.
and administrators know. They're not trying to make a decision of, is this frequent enough to call, does the teacher
Mhm.
have to, et cetera, like if it's a defined term in policy.
Thank you, Lisa. And that speaks to the reason why there's a couple pages of definitions to help people
Yeah.
around something that they want to know where does my responsibility start and where do they end? Because it really this is a big bit of work, but if it falls on a small party of individuals to execute it, is very overwhelming and oftentimes will fall by the wayside in terms of day-to-day maintenance. So thank you for that direction. Any additional things that I can take into account?
So I was just wondering on page 5 of the procedure with the teacher responsibilities, E is in italics because it says it has a potential conflict with board policy 4420 about academic grades being impacted by attendance. So I assume that means you're not sure if you're putting this in here? What is your plan?
My
What is
latest,
your
thank
recommendation
you,
on that?
thank you, Jennifer. We had this conversation on council because again, we're a school district that has worked really hard to move towards standards-based grading, which again, at its core, it says that a student's academic grade should demonstrate what they know and can do, and not have any sort of behavior influence associated to it. So when you look at attendance, and think about it as maybe a conduct problem, a behavior issue, we've had that discussion and identified that while what you have there are some model statements that I've found in other states and even within Utah as statements they use as it relates to reasons to compel individuals to come to school, we've identified the conflict there in the curriculum and instruction policies there. So that italicized piece in my most recent drafts, I apologize, Jennifer, I have kind of removed that to like a really down to the end of just where I've got a parking lot of things to talk about, but I've removed that from the current working body of the policy because we have identified that we do want to, until there's a discussion about having behavior influence grades, which attendance can be, to separate those. So that's why I hope that provides a little background. We're going to, at this point, suggest that we disclude the connection between grades and attendance.
Board, if you want a reference on that, the book by Ken O'Connor on standards-based grading includes an entire chapter about not confusing academic achievement with other kinds of grades, which can either inflate or distort the meaning of a letter grade.
We would hope that the ways that we can report on attendance on other types of reporting, even I think some of our standards-based report cards, even report cards sometimes will have a component that says how many days missed and this and that. It can stand alone as a data point that doesn't get blurred into the academic grade.
So that is what I would advocate for, because I still think it matters, but I understand the whole idea of not having it affect the academic.
Have it be reported somewhere separate
Have
for
it be
someone to
reported
see,
still, so people can understand
but
what
not
it is.
blur them together. Rebecca?
So-
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jennifer.
It's okay, it happens all the time.
Constantly.
So, without me, I have studied that other policy that's a potential conflict recently, so I forget what it says, but with taking that part out, how would a band teacher or woods teacher, how would this procedure affect them? Because so much of that you do have to, if you don't show up for any of the concerts, you're not really passing your band class, right?
Can I add something into your question here
Sure.
too? I
Yeah.
actually asked for feedback from Wendy from your email saying you'd like her input before we vote on this. And she actually has the same concern, and she brought up maybe that we need to amend that policy 4420, put something in there that says something about band teachers being able to
Those kinds of participation
Right.
classes, right? At Tenview, my understanding right now is, remember when we had this conversation with community council or PTA around, if you have a certain number of absences, you may not participate in extracurricular things, which could include a choir or band concert, and I was like, well, hold on, what if that impacts their grade? Because that was their one performance for the term, but they couldn't go to that because they had been at school, and I don't remember how that was resolved. I think it
I don't
actually they
remember how
have
it
to
was
make up the
resolved.
recovery in order to participate, which is a
Mhm.
motivator, right? I mean, but if we have a policy that says it can't impact their grade, then we do need to change
So
something.
maybe we need to amend that policy and not this policy.
Well, and again, this can be in waiting, that's why I'm kind of keeping that language that I find is kind of tried and true
So we
tested
would-
language.
Everybody would just kind of keep doing it how they've been doing it.
Well, again, because
until
there's-
until we get more clarity.
When there's a
to
ripple
the
effect,
data.
we can come back and amend this procedure, right? So that's why, again, that's the nice to have a fluid procedure that council can work on as an executive leadership team. And I know that those that work on, looking at Anne Marie in particular, that this is her policy series that we've been talking about, that can, again, reopen the conversation with the board as you would direct us to discuss some things that are related to this. You'll see in some of that stock language that I used before, there's proper ways to do that. You need to make sure there's disclosure of those impacts in the syllabus, and so there's plenty of due notice before you would take an academic impact on someone for a participatory class. So there's procedures around this, but we just have kept a really clear distinction because how clearly we see it's written in that 4000 series policy. So we can resolve this on another date, but I just didn't want to create a policy when someone brought to my attention it created a conflict. So I'm choosing just to remove it, to maybe revisit when we get this resolved. Does that make sense? But thank you for bringing those great points, and I think that, again, experienced educators and others that have been around would know what this rub is, because it's existed in education for some period of time. Gina?
Just really quick, to Melanie's, I found what I was looking for when I did it before. Under student responsibilities and procedure on page 4D is that the student is required to then, following an absence, students are required to complete the makeup work missed. So if we're going to make changes to the language, that might be like that they're required to go to the teacher to get it rather than the teacher chasing them down to give them the work. I don't know if that's...
I think that's helpful, yeah, but I think it would still be helpful under like teacher responsibilities under the procedure of what their expectations are, and what, I like what Keith said, you know. Or, I mean, having been a teacher, if a kid has been sick and there's obviously reasons, I'm happy to work with it, but if the family goes on vacation and then they just show up again and say, well, here, teach my kid.
Under the law, though, that says that's a valid reason now.
Yeah,
so it'd be
I know.
discriminatory if
So
first
this
act
is where I
otherwise.
just, but that's extra work for the teachers.
It is, yeah.
So how do we put that
So
on
how
back
do we,
on the
I just
student?
want to make sure, yeah, that this goes back on the
Like,
student.
it's an excused absence, but the responsibility.
Yeah.
But I think that's where maybe the student
Yeah,
needs to
it's
see that
different.
in the student part of the procedure, and then the teachers, it can also explain that. But I think that's a procedure thing
And
we can
maybe
change.
even something in the parent part.
Yeah, I agree.
The parent should be
Well,
working with their student.
I know
It is
that
in
when
the
it says
parent and
student,
the
it means me.
part.
My child, when it says student, people say, can your daughter bake me a cake? You realize I'm baking you the cake, right?
Right. It is in the parent and student part right now. It just maybe, I mean, maybe you want
I think-
different wording.
No, I think what
but-
we're talking about is having it very clear that if you miss, then you, the
It's
student
your
and the parent are
responsibility.
responsible to
It
get the
does
work
say
and
to
figure it out.
And to do it in a timely fashion of some sort, like, so it's not just showing up at the last day of school.
I
know.
love this. This is a great. I love all this evidence that you guys have been reading and thinking so hard about this procedure.
Can I
That's-
just interrupt though?
Thank you. We do need to watch our time, I'm sure.
Well, but we're policy. How much do you want us involved in the procedure? Because that's our job as policy. I have a bucket load of stuff written down here that I want to ask you about procedure, and then I got a bunch of feedback from Wendy.
Wonderful.
And it's almost all concerning the procedure.
I would
So-
love to receive all that, but like I said, let's identify, and I won't answer your question, I'll let the superintendent answer the question as to whether he wants you involved in the procedure making, right? Because I'm happy, because a lot of you have dropped off documents that show me, right? So I want to see those things. Most of the principals and social workers and counselors, a lot of teachers have read this and given me great feedback too. I'm really open to it all, and these voices that you're talking about would be very helpful, but like I say, the crafting of it and the work of it, because of all these things that you're talking about, should, again, in general, my understanding, be the work of the superintendent's staff to do.
Right.
I think this is one of those policies and procedures that its success really relies on everybody in our school community, not just administrators to administrators or others. I mean, it's not an isolationist approach. So in this particular case, I think if you got feedback, especially if they're in the form of questions, get them to Doug, and
yes, please.
He'll process them. He'll bring the procedure back to us in council just to make sure that it aligns with the legal standing of the policy. That's our main objective, is to make sure we don't have something in procedure that's contrary to the policy.
Yeah. So we're about at, like I say, some 90% of feeling like we've got the core what we need to be moving forward. The policy needs to be in place so the procedure can hang on it. Right. But then I think that even if we do, and I'm grateful to hear even Wendy's engaged in this. I'm looking forward. I have an opportunity to visit with Wendy later this week. I'm hoping she'll provide me some of that feedback then. Yeah. So this work of ongoing polishing this procedure and getting it right is a door that we can keep open for a period of time. But I do plan, maybe this is the conclusion I wanted to offer here, we do have planned in June to spend a half day with our administrators and their administrative staff, like attendance secretaries and so forth, to begin to implement some of these procedures so they can begin to get the letters ready, to get those timelines and those tiered responses ready to respond to. The hard thing about this, it's like doing laundry, right? When you get behind, it's just so overwhelming to get caught up again. And attendance can be that way too. If I were to ask them to do the policy now for a year's worth of absences that they haven't been tending as they go, they feel very overwhelmed. We've had to work through a lot of that, presenting with the principals like, what? This would mean this many kids I've got to have a conference with right now? Well, you would now in March, April, or May, but if you'd have started this process and dealt with them and you were notified of individuals to visit with as you went, you'd be just kind of pecking away at this and maintaining it, as opposed to feeling very overwhelmed with the heavy burden of a lot of people that are maybe in that category that need more intensive support from the principals. So we're trying to get them front loaded so they can start the year right with good momentum, good management of this, that we hope is doable. That's what, again, the flow chart hopefully was meaningful to you too. I have some great staff who showed this is a way to articulate a tier 1 and tier 2, tier 3 approach that helps everyone kind of see how we can manage this work of supporting truancy as well as chronic absenteeism that's contributing to students failing school.
Doug, let me just add, as well as the one person in the room who actually taught a performance music class in high schools, I can tell you that there are ways to address the issue that came up earlier, and I can share that with Doug or with you later on. But it's not hard to do. It's just a matter of what the teacher defines in their syllabus.
This is syllabus piece, right? Setting up the classroom, right? Yeah. Thank you. This is so helpful. Any additional comments? I just want to be sensitive to the time.
I would just love to recommend when you meet with the administrators, I think this is a great time. It's a new school year. We've got a new policy, like a reset for everybody, and to start the new year off, not just like here's our policy, but like let's get excited about being in school and helping in a fun, engaging way families to see the importance of being in school, like all the benefits for their students, and basically market the importance of good attendance from that positive way to help just kick off like this is our focus.
I'm glad we recorded that comment. I think I'm going to play it back to the principals when I meet with them in June, honestly, because that is spot on, Jennifer. Thank you so much. That is the message behind this. There is stuff to do. People complain about the teeth or this, but it really is about re-identifying and re-engaging with school. Being one of the most important things we can do as a public is having our kids in school, benefiting from it. And attendance is needed. So thank you so much. Go ahead, Lisa. No, sorry. Lisa and then Gina.
Well, I was just going to say,
Gina,
this, and this isn't specific to Doug, but I appreciate being involved in the procedure because I know that there's a difference, and I learned it since being on here, the difference between policy and procedure, and we're only responsible for the policy, but the public doesn't know that. And so they come back at me when the procedures, so I don't need to make the final decision, but I like to be involved in it because I'm going to be held accountable.
Yes.
Whether or not it's me that's accountable, that's actually accountable. So I appreciate you allowing us and Keith allowing us to be part of this because we really are. We're
Right,
the
because
buck
most of
spot
it,
stops.
when it came to the feedback we received, a lot of it was procedure, right? I mean, it came back to,
Yeah.
it all was, right? And so.
This is a procedure everyone interfaces with
Yes,
daily.
that's true.
Everybody does.
Yeah.
So it really touches a lot per people. So it is one that is worth spending the time. We've spent a year working on this, and we'll probably spend a number of months still refining it in the fall. But we want to make a great launch and a great start. Back to what was mentioned by Jennifer. Lisa?
Yeah, and just the one thought I had was, as you're talking with administrators and teachers, I would love to know, like, for them to know, look, we want to hear how it's feeling. Like, we're going to check back in however far down the road for your feedback on the burden of this, right? Is it not just our data showing how it impacts attendance numbers, but also, is this reasonable
Spot on.
expectation? And just so people know, like, if you're trying to do this and it's just like a whole new person's job, then we need to think differently because our job isn't to make it harder for everyone, it's to lift students and our administrators and teachers as well. We don't want to sink everybody, right? And the idea is to get people there and make it positive, so just.
Please do earmark somewhere on a future in the fall a check into attendance. I would want that kind of opportunity to check in and say how's it going. So thank you for planning for that. Yeah, Melanie.
TFU obviously this last quarter has been doing a really good job trying to get kids to be in class and be there. Does this policy still allow for them to be creative in ways to entice them to get to class and stuff?
Yeah, one of the sections, it's maybe section 5 or something, that is the site-based policies that are allowed. We wrote that. Again, I've been up to Timpview to visit with them 2 or 3 times. I've been in their hallways to watch them implement it. Frankly, I've been grateful for their piloting of some things, and being a former high school principal for a season of my life, I was grateful to see some of the creative things they were doing that were developmentally appropriate, and how they engage the public and the kids in an effort to make some differences, right? How sustainable that is, that's always the question, because there's a lot of all hands on deck that's going on, but sometimes it takes that much effort to turn the wheel, right? To turn and shift people's focus. So I believe, to your question, Melanie, I believe there's some allowance there for them to run things such as, I don't like the word detentions, or those they call it like an ISAM, and they do some different things that are really cool up there, and they are also about the marketing piece. They're not wanting it to sound like it's something really punitive, but yeah, I think it's allowed for that, and we've taken that into account as we've gone. So, and that'll continue to refine, because we do see, we want to balance our support for 18 schools and for 13,000 schools in this framework, but there really is the passion of where the rubber hits the road is at the schools. All that you see in that flow chart, notice that it gets to almost to the bottom before district office folks kind of come in and start running mediations and hearings and so forth. All of that ahead of that has to be a school who develops a sustainable effort to maintain these great communication and connections and relationships between teachers and students and parents and administrators, to where I think the great work of engagement at school takes place. So I look forward to the opportunity to visit with you again, maybe more briefly in June, about getting the policy approved.
That's wishful thinking.
All right. Well, for your sake, I enjoy it. I talk about with this all day long, but I'm thinking about our next steps, and I do look forward to and hope that you'd give us an opportunity to come back in the fall and talk about how has our launch been and what are we learning. I really invite that and welcome it. Thank you.
Okay, so on this one, next steps is going to be, because I still have a whole big old list to go over and.
I did too. I
Okay.
haven't said anything about my giant list.
Same. So the next step is going to be that we will send our feedback to you. And I will be copying the board on any feedback I send to you, so hopefully we don't keep repeating ourselves. Maybe we can do it that way too. And then we'll bring this back up in June for a vote. It would technically be our second reading, so we'll try and see if we get to the point where we can vote on it in June.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Doug.
Okay, we have 15 minutes left to finish our last 2 items. Actually, 17 minutes technically. They're both for Derek. Derek, you have the capital budget increase first and then the large purchase request second.
Yes, so capital budget increase is what we got right here is we're seeking an increase for Timpview's budget. Right now the contingency budget, which is $2 million, is completely spent. Okay, and so at this point, any change order, whether it's $10, $50,000, or $200,000, all of them will have to come to the board for approval. And so what this is saying is, hey, look, this is the bulk of everything that got dumped into contingency that wiped it out. It was set at $2 million, and you can see this is essentially 1.8 that wiped it. And so what we're asking is can we get this approved as a pricing increase to Timpview, so that way between now and the end of the project, anything that is essentially a change order that is less than 50, we can now charge it back to this contingency budget and not have to come back to board approval for everything under 50 grand. So
How
I don't
much
know.
more do you expect? I know that's an open-ended question.
Honestly, I hate to even throw a number because I've got essentially an emergency approval that I'm going to have to, that came to me today, that I'm going to have to approve essentially tomorrow before the board approves it because they didn't get it to me until today. But if they don't move forward with the project, they won't meet the start of the school next year. And so I'm going to have to essentially have an emergency approval for something that will come to you next month for approval that is well above $50,000, okay?
And it's outside something we were planning for.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, and if we approve it and it doesn't all get spent, then it just goes back in our capital
Correct.
budget,
So
right?
if we approve this, right, and it jumps up, we don't spend, let's say we only spend 500,000 of this amount that you're approving, right? What will happen is that amount that's unspent, we just essentially release back to capital.
And you're saying the amount we're approving tonight won't cover whatever your new expense is? It won't be covered? It's over $2 million?
No, not over 2 million, it's over the 50,000.
Oh, over the 50.
Okay, so
But I'm just saying,
It
if
would
we
put
approve
this
this
over the 2 million.
it would put.
If we didn't do anything.
Absolutely, correct.
And what is the city review comments, including added, or what, help me out with that?
So what happened was is the city gets to provide comments on all of our projects that tie into their storm drain systems, the sidewalks and things like that, that we have to meet their code. So what happened was the original plans that were submitted saying, hey, this is what we're planning on doing, they came back and said, no, we need you to do these things.
So can I just clarify, make sure I'm understanding this whole thing right? I'm going to use simple numbers. Okay, so let's say our original budget was 50 million, right? With a $2 million contingency. We want to now take our $50 million original budget and change it to $52 million and then keep that $2 million contingency.
Correct.
So that we can continue to go ahead and move forward pretty unhindered when big change orders come.
Correct.
That's what we're doing. Okay. But that's not the actual numbers. I get that. So I was just using simple math to just make sure I
But by
understand.
doing this, we'll be able to most likely hit our August
That's the
deadline.
August 15 date is still being told to me is that's the date they're telling everybody and they're still planning on. So.
And this helps us meet that deadline.
Correct.
By not having to slow things down by coming to the board for every change order, since we're over our contingency, or we're about to be
Since
over.
July is a non-board meeting month, right? It's also going to create, so this will definitely help keep
Just
that project moving forward.
One question and a slight pushback. Should we be seeing all that anyways?
That is definitely your call. I'd say anything, you're already supposed to be approving everything above 50,000.
Right.
I don't know why these ones weren't, okay? Clearly they were very early in the project, right, by the times on there and the signatures.
Right.
Everything going forward is coming, if it's 50,000 or more, is coming to the board.
It's just the stuff that would be under 50 that you would just be able to go ahead and push through.
Correct.
Without having to bring it to us.
Correct.
Because if we don't approve this, then everything comes to us.
Correct.
The $5 changes.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, understood. So this makes it so we don't have to see the $5 and $10 changes or whatever.
But we
that
will
seems-
still be anything over 50.
Correct, that's correct. And like tomorrow, like how there's this emergency one that's on the books right now that I've got to approve, I essentially am going to approve it after the meeting and tomorrow, essentially I'll let everybody know what it is. But for just the sake of timing, I have to approve it so that way we can still move forward, so.
It'll be approved by the board retroactively.
Correct, correct. And so it's coming back, it'll come to the board, it's just it'll be a retroactive approval.
Anybody have any questions or concerns or comments on this one? Okay, so this will go up for a vote in our business meeting. Actually, when I said we had 15 minutes left, we really have 5 because we have to do our business meeting, so, all right.
I thought that this meeting said 5:45 on it.
It did say on something.
Oh, it's
It
at
changed
5:45.
time.
Oh, no, I apologize. I thought we were done with this whole thing at 5:30.
So it's 5:45.
And there's no times on theirs.
Given what's going on tonight, it wouldn't hurt to have a little.
Yeah, okay, so. we'll
I
keep it.
just took the time off so we wouldn't have to wait till 5:45 to start this.
Okay,
meeting.
because
Yes,
on the
study
front
session.
login of Board Docs, it still says that 5:45, so
I didn't get it off every page.
Okay.
it's needed.
Okay, so then large purchase requests.
So what you have is the 4 large purchase requests that are in front of you. One of them is the portable move, which won't happen until it's ready to be moved, but that is the cost, and it's essentially gearing everything up to essentially get orders submitted, get, you know, items ordered so they can get here, get schedules lined up, things like that. So that is essentially the cost to move that portable.
And this portable
And-
is going to Lakeview?
Correct.
Oh,
I thought it was
Or,
like
sorry,
Westridge.
Westridge.
It says
Westridge.
Lakeview
We're gonna
on
swap
here.
it out
on
for the
here.
older one.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah.
I
So
mixed
that's
those
why I
up.
was
There's-
confused.
I'll have to update that one. But there's 2 portables that are dilapidated. One of them's a lease, one of them we own, but we want to essentially release those back. One of them back, and the other one is a disposal. And then these ones would then move over to that school.
Did they do this bid based on Westridge though? Does it matter, like,
Yeah,
just
I
like
Well, let me-
make sure it
preparing the
says
land, you know what I
Westridge
mean, like it
before we
looks
vote
like
on it.
that could differ?
I'll have to, my guess is it's only a few miles,
It'd
in
be-
terms of it, in
Like-
terms of moving
Sure.
from distance.
There's just like some
but
site work, right, set up and stuff like that.
I'll have to go back, because it sounds like there's some confusion between Lakeview and Westridge.
Yeah, this
It
says
Yeah.
says
on
Lakeview
the
on here, so
first
I have a hard
bid.
time, like Lisa said, floating on this, whether or not this is Lakeview or Westridge. Can we put this on for June? Is that gonna?
It will, so let me, if in between, essentially, or if we have a break between this study and the business meeting, I can confirm that really quickly.
Okay.
There is just a reinstallment at Edgemont
Where does it say that?
at the very bottom.
Yeah, it's on
There's
Is
a
that on
reason-
the invoice, or I'd have to look at?
This is, yeah, it's on.
It's responsibility, delineate, or no, or is it?
It's the
I
bottom
swear
of the
that we
document that
just
is.
talked about moving
Which
portables
document?
to Lakeview.
Is there 2 of the portable?
It's at the bottom under pricing.
Yeah.
Reinstallment at Edgemont Elementary, $21,460.
It's kind of, I think it's the
Everywhere
scope of
else
the
it
work.
says Lakeview.
Yeah.
My
I
guess
swear
is
we
they
said
messed it
Lakeview.
up
It's
and
page
left
6 of the
left
whole
it on
document.
as Edgemont in their document that they, or.
So they have,
Oh, yeah.
they've got Lakeview and Edgemont in there.
Okay.
Okay, we just got new portables at Westridge. We just did a big switch.
It's
up
gotta
at
be Lakeview then.
I'm
It's
pretty
gotta
sure it's
be
Lakeview. I feel like
Lakeview.
we've talked about Lakeview the entire time.
Yes.
I don't remember mentioning Westridge.
I remember a switch happening at Westridge though,
Yeah,
because there were some
that's-
older ones, so
that's
we were gonna
right.
take the ones from
Yeah.
So what may have
Timpview
been-
over to Westridge because there were 2.
It's
The ones that
Lakeview.
Tim-
I'm
I
pretty
think
sure it's
is
Lakeview too.
So
Westridge
we are
is
doing the
portables
Westridge.
are-
No.
Because that, we did talk about that,
But if-
didn't we?
So then it was
We've been
essentially.
confused the entire time.
Yeah.
Well, I just know, my kids go to Westridge. Their portables were here, and now they're all here. And that happened like 2 years ago. So.
I'll
so I
confirm
feel like
between, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna be Lakeview. The Westridge, the original comment about Westridge
Yeah.
was me being confused about which elementary it
Oh,
was.
had
so.
those old portables that we could switch them out
Yes.
for.
We did speak earlier in this meeting also, and that might be what's confusing it, about Westridge, under the list of facility needs, about the portables at Westridge, right?
Yes.
And that was getting rid of portables for the reason of safety, but now we're spending money to,
Yes.
There are some
Update
at Lakeview.
portables.
But
There are some in
there's
Dutton
already
Lakeview that
ones
are-
at
We
Lakeview.
have
we're just
numerous.
replacing,
We're
right.
replacing them with.
Right, no, I
It's still a
understand.
safety issue,
Yeah.
and that's still a capital need that probably needs
Okay.
to go on their
All right, I'm just saying.
No, but
I
you're
know,
right, it's not that we didn't wanna add it to, that's
Like,
like,
yeah, if it's something we're gonna get rid of in a couple years and we could sell these for some money to come on in, I would say stay with your old ones for a couple more years.
But we do already have
If
these
our plan
portables.
is to get rid of
We
them.
already
Well, we had to
have
put them
this
somewhere,
I
so.
know.
But
But I get your point.
that reinstall at Edgemont, I'm pretty sure that's a typo, that they did, they just missed updating that on the
Yeah,
invoice.
'cause the next line says Lakeview.
Bingo.
So Westridge's portables are okay?
I am like
I've got a
99.9%
text
sure
that
they
sent out.
Okay.
just got replaced like 2 years ago.
So
I remember because my
Lakeview-
kids didn't have a basketball court for a minute and it was very, very upsetting to them. So.
Priorities.
Yes.
Okay, so the next item that's before you is essentially the wellness program. This is bringing that wellness software in-house, instead of it being bundled with our health insurance premiums. This is now essentially unbundled as a separate charge. So that way if we change brokers or insurance or anything like that, there's no disruption to that wellness program.
Is it the same company we've been using?
But this is a different one because the other one had one baked in that we had no control over.
So what exactly do we get from this? I mean, I know, I understand like what we've been getting with our wellness, so.
We can, the way this works is we can design this however we want. They have a ton of, this is one of essentially we did an RFP. I think it did 4 different softwares that they considered, and there were 2 finalists that came forward. I sat in with the finalists, and this was the one that everybody chose. I didn't even vote on it as part of it, even though I went in having gone through this and preferring this organization, because we went and did one of the same kind of things for a wellness software, and we ended up selecting WellRight. And so, knowing that we landed on the same one was quite nice. But what this is a wellness software that allows you to essentially create a wellness plan, right? Requirements, optional requirements, nobody's required to, but let's say, hey, look, you go and get a screening, a health screening by your doctor, it's worth 100 points. If you, let's say, go and do a blood sugar test, here's 100 points. If you go and do this walking challenge, here's 100 points. And based off of the wellness platform, right, completing the wellness platform, they can be eligible for incentives. Right now, they've got incentives to where there's some Amazon gift cards. There's a little bit of a premium reduction at the end of the year that's given back to them. And that's kind of the reason, is to incentivize people to get those checkups, so that way you catch something
And
at a
there's a way to
stage
track
1,
it as well.
not a stage 4 or something like that. Yes.
Right.
So that's the wellness software. The next one is 95 Phonics. This is a K-3 reading program that was submitted for approval, and they're needing this to be essentially moved forward, so that way it can be all ready and in place for next year.
Are we not using it right now?
This is essentially
we
the
already
next year's
using it?
service agreement, I believe.
So this is a program that's already been set up and adopted.
Yeah,
This
that's
is
what I
just
thought.
Annually, we have
It's a
to
subscription.
renew an order.
Okay.
Correct, so it's still,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is
Is
it
it-
95%, is that what it is?
95 Phonics.
Oh.
95%.
But is that what the program my kids would
Yes.
say it is?
Yes.
Okay.
95%, yes.
Is it online primarily, or I just noticed that there's $1,800 in shipping fees, which just it just sounds like a lot, but is there just a lot of books?
It's not necessarily just books, there are a lot of manipulatives, charts, flip charts, a lot of things that kids write on, teachers write on, so it's less tech-based.
Okay.
It's for the primary grades.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Next one is the HVAC controls. This is the D&L HVAC controls. This is part of the capital facilities plan that we had. And this is essentially replacing those HVAC controls at Canyon Crest, Lakeview, and Westridge. Okay, and so the total project bid for that is the $173,926. And that'll essentially upgrade the HVAC systems at those 3 facilities.
Lakeview and Westridge again.
I know, I
But
noticed
that's nice though that this
And
came under
Westridge and
budget,
Edgemont.
so.
Yes.
No, it's about to
Okay.
close up.
Right.
Just so everyone's clear, I know exactly which one's Westridge and which one is Lakeview. I got it. I am totally clear on the two, just in case. Okay.
So is this all goes under this school year's budget?
So
Not
the-
next year's?
Well, so the way it works is this is out of capital, so it's not out of our operations, right?
Okay.
And so we have to get some of these things started now. And when the project is finished is when the budget will be charged and hit, right?
Okay.
And so capital's a little bit different than your operations because right now we've got projects that are, let's say, approved for 100 grand, but aren't going to be completed between now and the end of the year, right? So we have to roll that over into next year to finish it, right?
But
So
your 9 to
that's
5 phonics, that's
operations.
this year's operations budget, or it's from next
I
year's?
believe it is this year's operations budget.
Okay.
Because that's what they're planning on getting this. If I remember right, this is the invoice that came in right now off the top of my head. Is that the intent for this year's budget or next year's budget?
Sorry.
Is the intent for this 95 phonics this year or next year's budget?
Student use next year, teacher preparation this year. Well, this year and next year.
Could you be paying it out of this year's budget?
We would be, as Derek knows, this local fund is pretty optional on, we could buy it on July 1st, it would just be more inconvenient for schools and teachers.
Right.
And we may not have the material in time. So because it's local, I understand that the intent of the money is to be used in the year it's spent, because we have the flexibility of local funds, and because it's easier than us ever asking for it earlier than when they spent.
Okay. Any further questions on anything here on the large purchase request? Okay, then we will go ahead and adjourn our study session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn the study session.
Okay, we're adjourned. All right, are we okay to start our business meeting?
I really want to question him.
Can I make a phone call real quick?
Yes.
Are we gonna flood out here in a minute?
Sounds like a huge storm.
Okay, 5 minutes.
I think my mind has so he has yours already. Sorry, I can't share that with everyone, but I could take screenshots.
No, that's fine. From here on out, we'll just do it via email.
I brought it to the policy.
That's totally fine. Totally fine. No big deal.
Did you see that I can literally look like this entire place? Someone should have a series of all these meetings, like kind of video to everything, just me eating. I take it very seriously in
Okay,
these
that's-
meetings.
all right, thank you.
I always
That was
arrive
it.
starving. I literally ate every single food that day. And I did it last time too and realized it. I was like a little embarrassed, but then I was like, well,
That's right, what are you doing?
You got
I have no
it?
idea, Michael's surprising.
Right, and then
I'll make it my notes on
We do have these.
surprising. Like, I always ask them, he's never gonna say, hey, let's pack your bags.
Oh my gosh.
But I would love to, yeah.
here's my question, can you sell old portables? That's why I was like,
Depends on how, what condition they're in. So you can sell
so
them.
if we had newer ones, we're putting them in a place where within 5 years we hope to get rid of all of them. The newer ones would be
Potentially
smarter
sell them.
to not pay for them, and that's my own.
Yeah, no, I agree. But can we add to that list that
The problem is we don't have one.
possible Lakeview
We don't know if
Right.
we are gonna put out.
If Westridge
We're
is
getting
gonna
rid
have
of bullets,
box,
huh?
all of that.
Yeah, all of them, across the board.
Yeah, across the board.
So, yes,
Are those the
ideally,
only
we
two
could
buildings?
know everything and
And
then
what about
plan better with our money.
I don't remember off the top of my
Franklin
head.
has.
Timpanogos opened with a portable.
Timpanogos has portables.
Of course, that means.
People love that.
I'm just saying, like, any
Eating every
building
single
that has
piece of my food.
I'm
like, I literally was like scraping it, then I dropped part of my chocolate, and I was like, I know what I'm doing.
Hey, Lisa, I taught at Westridge in the 2000, 2001 school year.
Yeah.
And
going straight over to the school.
Like the entire third grade was out in portable.
Let me drop my
There might be a
class
few
to my
more
husband,
now,
but
but
you're right.
they
I
have not.
wasn't gonna go, but I'm feeling okay now, so.
Oh, okay. Yes, I totally saw
Classes
that.
in portable. We went through the classroom in the portable to the
get
back
you.
room to open what looked like a custodial closet, and that was a secret.
Oh,
I'm like, wow. In after class.
Oh.
So,
What are they putting there?
No, I know, because that's what I thought.
well, I keep thinking, something's great, and that's because a capital expenditure, because it's brilliant.
This rain is not helping.
I did, I've got it. I know
No,
why,
I know,
why I
and
was
it
confused.
happened earlier, and it just like,
Oh, and the lightning and thunder is so fun to watch on my dad.
right when kids were trying to
Yeah, track, they were doing their last track meet.
workout. Yeah, Davey was like, that was so fun to run in the rain. I'm like,
You know,
I'm sure you can
yeah,
do it on
they,
bike.
you know, when they saw the lightning, they said, you're done.
Is he feeling better?
Yeah, finally, Monday. Back.
Good to hear.
Okay, everybody, let's get started. Here we go. Are we recording? Okay, thank you. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our business meeting tonight. We're gonna start with a roll call today. Oh wait, I have to go over, I'm sorry. I cannot get this down and I don't know why. One of these days.
We're also not moving.
We are convened as the Provo City School District Board of Education. Tonight, it is 5:23 and 5:35 p.m. And we're meeting at 280 West 940 North in Provo, Utah. We'll start with a roll call. I'm Rebecca Nielsen, Board President.
Jennifer Partridge, Vice President.
Melanie Hall, board member.
Lisa Boyce, board member.
Meg Van Wagner, board member.
Gina Hales, board member.
Terry McCabe, board member.
Eric Anderson, Business Administrator.
Keith Patel, Superintendent.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to everyone else who's here with us. And I'll take a motion to convene our business meeting.
I move that we convene a business meeting.
Okay, thank you. Motion made by Board Member Boyce. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Hales. We're now in our business meeting. We'll start with our first item, which is a consideration to approve the capital budget increase. And Derek, do you have anything you'd like to add to that before we, any context?
Nothing really to add, just for the public comment, for them to understand what this is essentially asking for a budget increase of about $1.8 million due to the contingency max that we've hit. And so we need to increase the budget so that way items that are less than $50,000 we're able to move forward without board approval on those, as we have authority to do. The ones that are above 50,000 will still come back to board for approval, but this essentially would then free up that contingency budget to start doing that.
Okay. Perfect. I will entertain a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the capital budget increase of $1,827,763.77 as we discussed in the study session.
Thank you. Motion made by Board Member Partridge. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Hall. Board Member Partridge, you may begin. Any further discussion if there's any?
I don't have anything to say.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote then. All in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed with nay? The motion passes unanimously. On to our item number 5, a consideration to approve a large purchase request for our portable move.
Okay, so that you're considering is a portable move of those portables from Timpview to Lakeview. And I apologize to anybody who's been previously confused. It is because we have a leased portable at Lakeview and leased stairs to a portable at Westridge. So that is why there was some confusion, because we are trying to actively eliminate leases that we've got. And so this is essentially moving the portables from Timpview to Lakeview, and it would eliminate one of the leases that we have on one of those portables and also update them with newer portables because of the dilapidated state.
And the portables at Timpview need to be moved.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Derek. All right, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the large purchase request in the amount of $151,960.
Okay, motion made by Board Member Hales. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Van Wagenen. Board Member Hales, you may start any further discussion if there's any. None?
I just wanted to clarify, when do we anticipate this move will happen?
Not until after Timpview is out of their the old wing and into the new wing. So as of right now, we're going to wait until we for sure have met that deadline. And once we know that deadline has been met, that's when that deconstruction and move will start to take place. And so most likely at the soonest, probably around August would be my assumption. But I can double check and verify.
I'm curious to know, I guess, is the plan for those to be in place then for teachers to move into before their school year begins?
No, that is not the plan. So they already have the portables there that are existing. They will start there, and we will place the portable next to those ones and then move them over and tear them down.
All right. Did we get a motion on this one?
Yes.
We did.
So
Okay.
that's the discussion.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. All right, perfect. Let's go ahead and vote on this one then. All in favor with aye?
Aye.
Any opposed with nay? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Item number 6, consideration to approve a large purchase request for our wellness program subscription. Darren.
So this is our wellness software that we're looking to implement for the district for next fiscal year. Our current wellness software is bundled with our current insurance provider, and because we're moving to self-funding, essentially it's providing us the ability to unbundle it. So this is that.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the wellness 36-month subscription in the amount of $109,400.
Thank you. Motion made by Board Member Hall. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Boyce. Any further discussion? You may start if you'd like to, Melanie. Anyone else?
Quick question, I should have asked this before. When we're looking for a program, like what is that process in deciding which program to use?
So to go through, to decide which program, we go through an RFP, right? So we request for proposal, and they essentially submit everything that they're offers, depending on whatever service you're looking at getting.
Sure.
Or contract or RFP. And essentially you evaluate price, you evaluate what benefits you're going to be getting with whatever it is, and what happens is there's usually a committee of people that go into making that decision. So it's not a one-person decision, it's typically a committee that makes it.
And this is a 3-year agreement. And it's not an additional expense necessarily because it's just that now it's a self-funded expense rather than being lumped under our prior insurance expense.
Correct. And I believe this is a 36-month agreement. So.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll go ahead and take a vote. All in favor with aye?
Aye.
Any opposed with nay? Okay, that motion passes unanimously as well. On to item 7, consideration to approve a large purchase request. This is for our K-3 reading curriculum.
So what you have before you is the 95 phonics K-3 reading program for $93,181.96. This would essentially give us the approval to issue the PO and get that program ordered. If the books and materials show up before the end of the year, it will be charged out of this year's budget. If it hits next year, it comes after July 1st, it will end up hitting next year's budget just due to the shipping timing. So there is a chance that we'll hit next year's budget just due to the timing and how late this is.
Okay, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the 95 phonics reading program for $93,181.96.
Thank you. Motion made by Board Member Boyce. Is there a second?
Second that.
Second by Board Member Partridge. Any further discussion starting with Board Member Boyce?
No, I think this is a great program. I love the results we've already seen in terms of growth at all of our schools.
Okay, we'll go ahead and vote on this one. All in favor with aye?
Aye.
Any opposed with nay? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Last one, a consideration to approve a large purchase request. This is for the district HVAC controls.
What you've got before you is a large purchase request for 3 of our facilities. It is Lakeview, West Ridge, and Canyon Crest. That's the one, bingo. All 3 of them. You can actually see their handwritten notes. That was the what our gentleman in our facilities department wrote down and said, hey, this is our estimate of what this is going to cost. And you can see that just based off of their estimate, they were very close. So our maintenance department knows kind of what they're doing in their HVAC controls. So this is, those 3 items that came out of the facilities request, and this will give them the approval to start moving forward on those and getting them completed before the next school year.
Okay, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the DNL HVAC controls for $173,196.
Thank you. Motion made by Board Member Hales. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I think Board Member Hall won. Second by Board Member Hall. Any further discussion, starting with Gina?
I don't have any.
Anybody else?
Derek, when you made that comment about our maintenance crew, it made me think I want to give them our thanks. They do so much, and without them, there's so much that couldn't function, but they go unnoticed, right? So please thank them for it.
Thank you for recognizing them.
We'll go ahead and vote on that. All in favor with aye?
Aye.
Any opposed with nay? Okay, motion passes unanimously. And that's all the business we have today. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn the business meeting.
Okay, we are adjourned.
That one turned off.
So Thursday night is outdoors. Night outdoors, right? But it's inside.
It's usually
It's outdoors Thursday.
In the backyard.
That's
Who's that?
yeah.
I read my soul. I was going to give the update on what it is.